Our next guest is a digital strategist and an analog opportunist. Child of the Chicago suburbs, he cites his years attending college in Ohio as his most formative, and his years since living in Chicago City proper as his most enriching. In his spare time, he enjoys comic books, scotch, and the oeuvre of the faces. He lives in Morgan Park with his wife and daughter, where he hosts and produced the live hit show The French Room, featuring stories of, by, and about the South Side. Follow his further exploits on Twitter at @ourman in Chicago. Please welcome back to Tuesday Funk, Scott Smith.
Yeah.
Thank you. There are a handful of books I recommend to people who want to understand Chicago. And yes, I'm starting this piece off with a reading list. But look, if you don't like anything else I have to say, at least I've given you some options for something better. Think of it like Amazon's recommendation list in reverse. People who also dislike this reader at Tuesday Funk bought the following. Anyway, if you want to understand Chicago politics, start with American Pharaoh, Ann Cohen and Elizabeth Taylor's biography of Richard J. Daley, and Fire on the Prairie, Gary Rivlin's book about Harold Washington. If you want to know more about the sectarian tribal mix of people who call themselves Chicagoans, you can't do much better than Studs Terkel's Division Street America. And if you want to understand Chicago's influence and status as an innovator in everything from architecture to television to literature, read The Third Coast by Thomas Deichen. Now those 4 books are a great place to start, but mostly they tell you about the past. Natalie Moore's book, The South Side, released just this year, is required reading about Chicago because it tells you about our present and updates the past that Cohen, Taylor, Rivlin, Deja, and Studs all explore. What's so essential about Moore's book is how it argues against myth through a mix of facts and memoir. Against the historical context, Moore explains her own experiences with segregation, the real estate crisis, gun violence, political movements, the decline of the middle class, black and otherwise, and Chicago as the epicenter of social change, good and bad. Moore's life experience fills in the gaps between headlines and stereotypes. Within chapters like Notes from a Black Gentrifier, Kale is the new Collard and We Are Not Chirac, lives the nuance of stories often untold. It's the kind of nuance that's tough to fit into a headline, especially headlines about the South Side. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the South Side defies easy explanations. The other day I was talking with 2 guys named Max Grinnell and Bill Savage. Now, Max is a writer, professor, and University of Chicago graduate. Bill's a professor too, as well as a renowned Chicago historian, writer, editor, and former bartender. We were talking at that well-known gathering spot for gadflies, loudmouths, and public intellectuals called Twitter. About a week ago, Max mentioned his former Hyde Park residency and noted in an aside, to some, that's not the real South Side. And Bill replied that people who say Hyde Park is not the South Side promote a narrow view of the South Side they otherwise despise. Now they're both correct, though I'm not sure such a view is limited to those on any particular side of Chicago. For some who've never ventured south of Roosevelt, there's a desire to convince themselves that there is good reason never to have done so. To paint the South Side with the broadest brush possible, or to tell themselves that Hyde Park has something other South Side neighborhoods do not, like museums or a university or a lakefront. For some who live there, this reaction is something akin to an internal pathology born of anger. Surviving a lack of jobs and feeling overwhelmed by the violence that's a part of some areas becomes a badge of honor others won't be allowed to claim. Now, to make it very clear, the South Side contains multitudes. 31st Street Beach is great if you love water and clean beaches but hate crowds. For sheer beauty, heading south on Lakeshore Drive beats the drive north any day, especially if you end up at Promontory Point and walk around. Maria's Bridgeport is one of the city's great bars. Vito and Nick's in Ashburn serves one of the best thin crust tavern style pizzas ever. Len's in Chatham is barbecue. Period. End of sentence. You can tour a damn submarine at the Museum of Science and Industry. Pullman contains the city's only national monument, and you can get one of the best burgers and ice cream cones in Chicago at Top Notch Burgers on 95th Street and Rainbow Cone on Western and 91st, which are within 5 minutes of each other in Beverly. And that's just the stuff that Channel 11 covers. Never mind the stuff only locals know, and oh, by the way, there's going to be a presidential library down there in a few years, so go now and beat the crowds. Denying the real South Side also includes Hyde Park or Beverly depends on the tired idea that there are nice neighborhoods and there are bad neighborhoods, and that the problems that plague our city stop at boundaries that are a bigger concern for real estate agents than criminals. It also means denying the nuance within neighborhoods, the prosperity that often lives close to danger. I live in Morgan Park, which is about as far on the southwest side as you can be and still be in Chicago. Now, on the whole, it's pretty nice, with some areas you might diplomatically call dicey. Last week, 4 people, including a pregnant woman, were shot and wounded in Morgan Park. But the day after that, I walked block after block, taking pictures of the historic bungalows, Queen Anne homes, and old mansions that populate the neighborhood. Blocks that contain more than a few Chicago landmarks and designs by Frank Lloyd Wright. The sun was out. 3 days ago, a man was shot in Morgan Park by the father of his ex-girlfriend. This happened roughly a mile from my tree-lined street with its well-maintained lawns and some professionally so. I'm barely a block from a park which holds an Easter egg hunt every year. But it was on this street, my street, 2 years ago, that a couple of guys robbed me at gunpoint 2 doors down from my house. When a lawyer for one of the guys showed up in my driveway with a subpoena, the first words out of his mouth were, "This is a beautiful street. I can't believe you got robbed here." Me neither. Now I can tell you about the Pro-Am cycling event Morgan Park will host in a little over a week, the annual art walk in October, or the Live Lit series, much like this one that I host once a quarter. It's called The Crunch Room, and the next show is July 21st at Beverly West Restaurant. Go to thefreshroom.com for more information. I could tell you about all that in an effort to convince you that even within a particular neighborhood, nothing is all good or all bad, or remind you of the times people have been shot in tourist districts downtown, or what we call a riot in one neighborhood is sometimes called a post-game celebration in another. But sometimes it feels like I'm belaboring the point, which is this: myths are stories we tell ourselves to explain things that seem far away, things we don't understand. And for a lot of people, the South Side is a myth. Are there very real problems of poverty and violence in some parts of the South Side? Yes. Let me state unequivocally that there are people living in some places there who would leave if they could escape it. But those blocks, and they are blocks, not neighborhoods, are no more or less representative of the entire South Side than Edgewater, Rogers Park, Lincoln Park, Lakeview, or Wicker Park are completely representative of the North Side. That's what's always struck me, how often problematic areas on the North Side are referred to by their neighborhoods, while shootings are often said to be happening on the South Side. When good things are happening on the South Side, we often speak of them as exceptions or grade them on a curve. Residents or visitors describing a restaurant or a bar as pretty good for the South Side is literally why we can't have nice things. Natalie Moore's book, The South Side, is a welcome corrective after years of reporting that is focused on the negative in that part of the city. It doesn't offer easy explanations. Instead, it embraces the complexity of its subject and describes how policy becomes personal. At some point, if you want to get people to stop believing in myths, you have to replace them with your own stories, preferably ones based in science, fact, and experience. While few of us are ever going to write our own book on the complex parts of Chicago we love, we're still able to be capable of creating the culture we want, even if it takes a bit of nuance. Thank you.